Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm the Events and Marketing Director with Bookworks, a longtime Albuquerque independent bookstore. We've been in Albuquerque's North Rio Grande River Valley for 35 years now, and we are surviving this pandemic right now with your web orders. We are doing some curbside service, but the vast majority of our business is online. So no matter where you are, you can buy this book, Fury, on our website, which is bkwrks.com. This week we have free shipping. Until tomorrow we have free shipping, and then later this week we will have free shipping on orders over $25. So we're trying to give a lot of free shipping promotions and other coupons through our website. Please stay tuned to that. We also have some excellent events coming up in August. We're very pleased to have contributors to the book Fury, Women's Lived Experiences During the Trump Era, with us here tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a panel discussion followed by a question and answer. So if you have a question, please feel free to pop that into the chat at any point. And after the women are finished speaking, we will attend to those questions. So Fury, tonight we have co-editors with us. We have Amy Roost coming from San Diego, California. Amy is a documentary podcaster and a freelance journalist. She's an Annenberg School of Journalism Fellow for 2019 and recipient of many journalism awards from her op-ed columns in the San Diego Union Tribune. Her forthcoming memoir is based on a podcast she wrote and produced about how she replaced a Black child that her parents had adopted and later returned in 1962. Sounds like a fascinating story. We also have with us Alissa Hirshfeld, the other co-editor for Fury. She is with us from Santa Rosa, California. Alissa has a psychotherapy practice, and her articles have appeared in the American Journal of Psychiatry, Creative Research Journal, and the Therapist magazine. She's also a memoirist. Her book is called This Whole Wide World is Just a Narrow Bridge, and she's written a novel called Living Waters, From Harvard Halls to Sacred Falls. Melanie Brooks is with us. She lives in the Northeast. She teaches at Northeastern in Boston and lives in New Hampshire. She is the author of Writing Hard Stories, Celebrated Memoirist Who Shaped Art from Trauma. Her work has been published in numerous journals and magazines. And let's see, she is with us tonight as a contributor to the book Fury. Nina Gaby is also with us tonight. She also has a background in mental health. She is a general psychiatrist in Vermont. She's also a writer and a visual artist. Her art is held in many collections, including the Smithsonian, the Rochester Institute of Technology, and the University of Arizona. She also writes essays and she's the author of the book Dumped, Stories of Women Unfriending Women, another contributor to Fury. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I will let Amy take it away.
Hi, thank you so much, Amanda, for hosting this and putting it together. I know there's a lot that goes into these virtual events that everybody's kind of learning as we go, changing the wheels as we're rolling down the road. So I really appreciate your being flexible from we were supposed to be there in Albuquerque tonight to being virtual with everyone here tonight. And thank you everyone for being here. The question I get asked most often is why this book? So when in 2016, when the day after the election, I felt like many of you, shocked and just dejected and not sure, what to make of everything. And at the same time, I was going through some personal shock, which I write about in the essay that I wrote for the book. My son had suffered 2 hemorrhagic strokes a couple months prior to the election and had just been released from the hospital after brain surgery to live with us while he went through a rehab program. And so I was reeling kind of from all directions, not just because of the election. And I felt alone and just very disoriented. And thankfully, my husband is a clinical psychologist, and he was coming home and sharing with me that other people were experiencing what I was experiencing. And that really helped me to know that I wasn't alone. And I thought it would be great to collect stories of what women were going through, not just following the election, but leading up to the election and on into the administration, what we were experiencing, and then sharing that with the world so that other women could hear from the women that are in this collection and know that they're not alone. And so that's how the idea for the book came about, was to sort of create a sense of community. And just to give you an idea, the original title, working title for the book was We Knew, referring to women. And I think so many women did know, in either on a conscious or subconscious level, what we were getting into. And I remember shortly after the election, a lot of people sort of saying, well, let's, okay, so we didn't want him elected, but let's see what he's got. And let's give him a chance. And if you used words like fascist or anything that was outside of, how we refer to presidents, normally, you were told that you typically were told that that you were being hyperbolic or exaggerating, what have you. And so now I think with, 3.5, almost 4 years into this, we did know, and our instincts were accurate, and we were not being hyperbolic, that most of what we had seen prior to the election told us enough. And it was just a matter of then watching the inevitable play out, unfortunately. So that's how the book came about. And it's not all doom and gloom. There are some sad stories in the book, and there are some stories that will be hard to relive because you've had to live it once. But you'll also feel a sense, I think, of community when you read it. And there are a lot of stories of hope. And there's quite a number of stories that talk about just the experience of being a woman, and what our mothers have instilled with us, and what our children have taught us during this time. There's a whole section on parenting that's really, it was for me. I have adult children, but it was quite eye-opening. So I will read just a short part of the essay that I wrote for the book, which is entitled New Normal, which at the time, new normal was kind of a new term, but now it's kind of one of those overused terms. And I'll just read a small excerpt picking up on the day after the election. It's written like a journal, the essay is, and it toggles back and forth between what I'm going through personally and what's happening in terms of learning that Trump has won the election. November 9th, 2016. For the second time in 10 days, I'm faced with a new normal. Donald Trump is the president-elect. While waiting for the coffee to brew, I glance at Facebook on my phone. The first thing I see are celebratory remarks about Trump's victory from a Christian fundamentalist high school friend who rarely posts to social media. Each post ends with the words, "Praise be to God," as if God somehow ordained the election results. I unfriend her. Next, I come across a comment by a friend of my stepson's, a white male millennial. It reads, "Apparently, lots of women like to have their pussies grabbed." I respond, "Dear white men, seriously, for just one day, shut the fuck up. Take some time to reflect, bros, and have a good, long look in the mirror. What have you done in your life to set women back or kept them from rising up? Have you too stereotyped women in your lifetime? Have you consciously or unconsciously objectified women and contributed to voters having such a low regard for women that they would elect a race-baiting, misogynistic liar to be president? Later in the morning, Stuart, that's my older son, not the one that had the brain surgery. Later in the morning, Stuart texts me photos of his college library, where overnight someone spray painted swastikas on the bathroom walls. I can't take it. I also can't look away. November 10th, 2016. I listened to Trump's press conference on my way home from dropping Spencer at rehab. He mentions that he's considering keeping two provisions of the Affordable Care Act, the prohibition against insurers denying coverage because of a patient's pre-existing condition, a provision both Stuart and Spencer will depend upon their entire lives, and the one that allows parents to keep their children on their insurance plans until they turn 26, which currently applies to both of my sons. Hearing that Trump will preserve the key components of Obamacare is a massive relief until a commentator points out that Trump's plan will never work. Without a mandate for everyone to purchase health insurance, the pre-existing condition provision would send insurance companies into a death roll. I've gone my whole life blithely assuming I could handle anything thrown my way. Now that I'm forced to prove it, I'm not sure I can. My reserves are all up. I just want someone to hug me, hold my hand, leave flowers on my doorstep, bring me a hot roast beef sandwich with extra cheese, or simply text me a funny cat video. I've suffered a crack or two or three, and I'm afraid I won't be able to hold myself together much longer. Spencer, who knows nothing of my gossamer thin nerves, arrives home depressed, and I don't blame him. One day he's working his way toward a college degree in engineering, mountain biking and snowboarding on the weekends. And the next day he's using a walker and can't find his way to take out the trash. I suggest we go to the beach and let nature work its magic. As we amble north along the shoreline, mist settles on our matching curls. Salt rims our lips, and the rhythm of the wave steadies our breathing. When the stars come out, we turn back for home, ready to, once again, face reality. A dear friend calls to check up on me. I confide, I'm barely hanging on. She, a recovering alcoholic, offers me some ironic and excellent advice. It's okay for you to have a glass of wine. Spencer would want you to. I cuddle with Ain, apologize for my recent testiness and for having triaged his needs into obscurity these past several months. He takes my hand, kisses it, and forgives me. I pour that glass of wine and savor it in small sips. Dinner consists of a warm baguette with a wedge of brie cheese. I read for a while, a quiet novel by Wendell Berry, and then head to bed early because I'm tired and because there is nothing noble or pretty about an exhausted martyr. So that just gives you a flavor. And there's many voices from many parts of the country, representative of the population of the country as a whole. And they're brave stories and they're hopeful stories. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alissa. And Alissa, who stepped in as a co-editor for Fury. When I was about to give up, I didn't think I could do it on my own. And I asked several of the writers who had contributed essays if anybody would be willing to co-edit with me. And Alissa immediately volunteered, and this book would not be here if it weren't for Alissa's volunteering. So owe a huge debt of gratitude to Alissa for stepping up like she did and offering a perspective that I think is vital, which Alissa will share with you.
Thank you. So Thank you to Bookworks. Thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you to Amy Roost, whose brainchild this whole collection is. So I work as a psychotherapist, and like Amy's husband, I was hearing clients even before the inauguration, during the campaign, leading up to the election. I was hearing people having all kinds of reactions to President Trump, to nominee Trump, specifically women, men also, but most of my clientele are women, and women were the ones that were speaking out the most and expressing the most anxiety. And I have a range of clients. So I have clients who are Latina, Muslim, lesbians, and all of them were feeling very fearful, seeing what has now become blatantly obvious, in terms of the president's racism and homophobia and disrespect of minority groups and people that are not white or not like him. And particularly survivors of sexual abuse who make up a fair percentage of my practice were very triggered and activated, especially once the Access Hollywood tape was released. Women talked about not feeling safe living in this country, feeling raped all over again. Women who have narcissistic parents or narcissistic partners were seeing the narcissistic traits in Trump and, just reliving the trauma that they experienced in their childhoods or in their relationships. And then also young people. I do hear from young people who are very anxious about the climate and about the fact that nothing's being done to address climate change. In fact, protections are just being ripped apart daily. And kids who are afraid to go to school because of mass shootings, and, to see that really nothing's being done despite the lip service being, that was given to the March for Our Lives kids. So I was hearing all of this, and really, for the first time, I'm trained, like most therapists are trained, to really leave our political views, our spiritual views out of the room. But I was really feeling like, this is a different time in history. This is not normal. What we're experiencing is not normal. And I really felt like it wasn't enough to just address people's individual psychological needs or their issues that they bring from childhood. I was really seeing more clearly than ever, although of course I've been aware of it, but was seeing how the political reality affects people's mental health. And so I felt an obligation, if I was going to be treating my clients effectively, I felt like I not only needed to address their individual histories and their individual psychology, but I needed to do something about what's going on, politically in the country. And so, when this opportunity came about, when I heard about Amy's book that she was planning, I kind of just jumped in without knowing everything that would be involved. But I just felt like, oh, here's another opportunity to do something and to give women an opportunity to have their voices heard. And we have, as Amy said, we have a diverse group of authors that are part of the collection, women from all different backgrounds, racially, religiously, sexual orientations. So it was, it felt like a way to empower women to speak out and to give readers a chance to hear from different women and to feel validated in what they're feeling. And, you know, I was getting involved in different ways. I also got involved in a group called Duty to Warn, which is a group of psychotherapist, mental health professionals across the country that feel an obligation to warn of the dangers that Trump presents from a mental health perspective. And now, of course, in this pandemic, the dangers that he presents from a public health perspective in general. So I'll just read you a short selection from my piece, which is called The Challenges of Being a Psychotherapist in the Age of Trump, which talks about some of what I've described, some of what I was seeing, and some of how I became more of an activist. I have realized that since psychotherapists are in the business of promoting communication and interpersonal relationships, within our private offices, we have a crucial role to play in fixing our broken system. People on different sides of political issues have forgotten how to debate civilly or even how to listen to one another, much less how to negotiate and compromise. I never imagined that empathy would become a political act, but alas, it has. People on opposite sides of the political divide, as well as people of different cultural backgrounds and faiths, seem unwilling and sometimes unable to empathize with different perspectives. But when we listen deeply to one another's stories, meaning we practice seeing things from another's perspective while silencing the voice inside us that wants to disagree or tell our own side, we learn that we all want the same basic things: a good life for ourselves and our families, good health, an adequate income to provide for our needs, a community to belong to, and a sense of meaning and purpose. When I teach clients to feel compassion for themselves and to empathize with their partners and family members, I hope that I am also providing them with the skills to empathize with their fellow human beings, whomever they may be. This may be the most important political action I can take in this period in the country's history. So with that, I guess I will pass the baton to Nina and let her tell you some about her piece.
So, you know, first, can I just say to Alissa, your piece has given me so much gratitude, because, you know, we no longer are just in the situation that we were in when we all wrote our essays, but now we are in a situation where we are stuck in a pandemic and we can do so much less than we could. And as a psychotherapist and a psychiatric nurse practitioner, I also wonder, what am I doing? And to hear someone else, someone whose words I respect so much, like yours, that, you know, just by offering empathy, we are you know, activists. And I reminded myself of that so many times, because now I'm just that little face on the telepsychiatry when I see my patients on Zoom, and I'm that little smiling face up in the corner of their screen. I can't hug them. I can't, you know, I can't do anything more than just be an empathic ear and maybe, you know, write the right prescription for them. But I just wanted to thank you for that. I found it very profound. Okay, so anyway, you know, I looked back at what I wrote, and I wrote what I did back about situations back in the 80s when I was a kind of a radical feminist, and we did a lot of direct action, and how it relates to now when it's called Bring Back the Batakas, the long view. And going to a rage room 2 years ago after Trump's election with my 2 nieces, my daughter, and my best friend. And we just, I don't know if you know what rage rooms are, but you pay to break things. You pay to put on protective gear and play loud music and break things. And it reminded me of back in the day when we were kind of taught that violence begot violence, and that we shouldn't we shouldn't express ourselves with that degree of anger. So, you know, when I heard about Amy and Alyssa's call for submissions to this book, it was like I had to write about that Bataka thing and the rage room that I went to. So my little piece that I'm going to read to you, the excerpt from my essay, really addresses a time when, in the night, you know, the late 70s, early 80s, when we had this hopeful innocence. And I was comparing and contrasting that period of time to even the period of time where we all sat down to write these essays. And maybe we still had some hope. And how does that compare with today? And presenting our work tonight feels like it's a very, very different environment even than it was when we first did any of these readings. So it was with a really different heart that I'm reading my own excerpt here. So in 1980, we did consciousness raising tours to adult bookstores to demonstrate the connection between media portrayal of women, porn, and the violent treatment of women. So this is from the essay. The shops were usually on main drags in the downtown fringes. They provided a community of sorts for their patrons who nowadays would be indulging in these behaviors alone in front of a laptop, which is a whole lot sadder than when they were standing in the flesh in a brick and mortar. The physical presence of these men provided a viable target for our anger, rather than the knowledge that these guys exist today in a much darker virtual space where anything goes. The proprietors had no patience for our antics. I chastised them for making a living off of women's bodies. Were they familiar with rape culture? Of course not. We made painful eye contact, and I used this pathology to construct our new world paradigm. Of course, was it pathology, or was it just the way things were? Whose fault? Who exactly was profiting, and who was suffering? Friends who worked in the sex trade business found it liberating. It paid much better than waitressing, after all. Nonetheless, these folks too joined our ranks. Some of us shoved mirrors between each other's legs just to see where all the parts really were. A lot of us fell in love with each other. It was a heady time. Our group sought opportunities for direct action, which was new, fun, and provocative. Like in 1980, when a local hospital organized a conference on rape and refused to allow any of us any time to present the new feminist perspective. The audience consisted of cops and social workers, professionals who had yet to view rape as assault. Trauma was not yet ubiquitous in our general vocabulary. We crashed the event, and while most of the audience dispersed, we held fast to the microphone. A few attendees stayed back and thanked us for presenting the concept of rape as a violent act and symbolic of what would soon be known as rape culture. You're welcome, we replied, and went off to our next skirmish, likely filling the locks of the local porn theater with super glue, then situating ourselves across the street the next morning to watch them try to pry open the doors. We weren't angry. We had just changed the world. So, you know, I recall that time as such a time of change. And I was so grateful to be able to document those early days in this collection of essays, because I'm afraid that some of that gets lost in what we're seeing today. It's so different now. And I wonder what the hope is that our young people have today. You know, filling the locks of porn theaters, you know, with super glue isn't going to be something that people are going to do, because I don't even know if there's any porn theaters left. You know, everything is very different now. So I was really very grateful to be able to present that. And thank you again for first choosing my essay, guys. And so now I guess we turn it over to Melanie correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Amanda, for having us. And thank you, Amy and Alissa, again, for putting this collection together. And thank all of you for being here and listening to us and sharing in our fury, as this book is titled. You know, I think I, like most people in 2016, kind of felt like after the election that I'd been punched in the gut, and the air was kind of sucked out of me. And I think over these 4 years, what we've all kind of felt is that we're gasping for air, and we're continuing to try to re-oxygenate, you know, our lives a little bit. And it's like the air just keeps getting sucked out of us. And I think what I have found as a writer is that when those things happen, we have to find a way to put them into words. You know, we have to try to find some way to pour out what we're feeling onto the page. And I think by doing that as writers, what we're doing is inviting other people to share in those emotions and share in those feelings. And so for me, that was a big part of, you know, kind of the writing I did following the election, a lot of the writing that I've done since then as well, just recognizing that, you know, we all are feeling a lot of emotion around, you know, this presidency. And now, as Nina was mentioning, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've got a lot going on. And I think it's more important than ever that we turn to story and that we turn to universal experience to be able to kind of relate to one another and feel that connection, especially as we're having to deal with social distance. So for me, you know, I have kind of continuously every day, you know, something new that our president does, it, you know, kind of knocks the wind out of us. But I think many of us can kind of point to moments along the last 4 years that have kind of caught our attention or triggered something in us particularly. And there was one such moment for me, and that's what my essay is. And it's short enough that I think I can read the whole thing. It's called "The Biggest Hole is Where the President's Empathy Should Be." And I won't give any preface because it kind of prefaces itself. Since Donald Trump took office, we've had unfettered access to the flaws at his core. Stream of consciousness tweets, boorish behavior caught on camera, ignorant and misinformed rhetoric on the world stage, stunning inaction or shockingly inappropriate responses in moments of national crisis, harsh policies to protect our borders, leaked conversations from behind closed doors, all have pointed to colossal deficits in his character, and again, a conspicuous disregard for people of color. Aftershocks reverberated worldwide in the wake of his vulgar and hate-filled comments about Haitian and African immigrants on January 11th, 2018, when he reportedly used the word shithole to describe their countries of origin. His striking lack of compassion in that moment was startling, but no words can describe the added cruelty of maligning Haiti one day before a painful anniversary when memories of trauma and unfathomable loss inevitably resurface. 8 years ago on a Wednesday night in January, the first night of a new business writing class at Northeastern University, I began the standard getting to know you banter with my students. A young man in the back row quietly introduced himself. "My name is Henry," he said. "I'm from Haiti." An uneasy silence descended on the room. 24 hours earlier, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake had devastated this man's Caribbean nation. After sending my 2 young children off to school, I'd spent most of the day in front of the TV watching as CNN's Anderson Cooper, whose crew brought us the first images of the catastrophic quake's aftermath, wandered street after street of collapsed buildings, filming the desperate efforts by ordinary men and women to rescue their loved ones trapped beneath the rubble. I looked into Henry's eyes and found my voice. "Is your family okay?" I asked. "I haven't been able to get in touch with them yet," he answered, and I felt the weight of his hope land on that final word. My evening plan to discuss the value of good writing in the workplace seemed so unimportant in the face of this personal crisis. I wanted to stop class there, cancel it for the night, send everybody home, and let Henry go do what he had to do. But Henry was here in this classroom, his notebook open on his desk, ready to learn, stoic, poised. His demeanor spoke to a kind of resilience that I'd rarely encountered, one that says, "Today, this is what I have to do," a resilience I needed to honor.
Our thoughts are with you all, I said, despite how hollow the words sounded, and the rest of the students murmured similar sentiments. We finished introductions, and I passed out the course syllabus. Let's get started. Later that night, I sent Henry an email offering to extend any upcoming deadlines so that he didn't have to worry about falling behind, and urging him to take the time he needed. His response, sent the next day, brought the reality of the news reports so much closer. Some of my family is okay, but they're still searching for one of my sisters. She is buried under the debris, but my other sister told me that they heard her voice and are trying to free her. Over the next 3 days, Henry sent me sporadic updates. They are still digging, but there's no sound coming out. They haven't found her yet. Last night, they found her purse. They are still digging. Now I am preparing for any news. And 5 days after our first night of class, they found my sister's body. The cold finality of Henry's message swept through me. I'd watched the ongoing footage of people being pulled alive from beneath the ruins of homes and businesses and schools, and I'd allowed myself to feel a spark of hope for Henry's sister, too. Now, all that remained was my imagined scene of his grieving family, how their exhausted muscles ached beneath the layers of sweat and grime, how their vacant eyes sank deep into their faces, how their hands, torn and bleeding, nails jagged and lined with dirt, cradled his sister's broken body. When I commemorate the yearly anniversary of the Haiti earthquake, I am still haunted by that unbearable image, by all of the unbearable images of similar losses we witnessed in the days and weeks afterwards. More haunting, though, is one man's inability to comprehend that when he separates himself from others' stories, refuses to lean in and acknowledge their pain, and fails to mourn when they mourn, he is turning his back on the very thing that could make him human. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much.